Gary here, Strong Fast Fitness, talking today about box jumps, which are popular with some people. And we're going to talk about two of the misconceptions with box jumping and what we can do about it, and also how to make it a little bit safer for people who really don't enjoy doing box jumps or are kind of put off by it because you can't get hurt doing them. So the first thing is, why do we do box jumps? Well, part of it is, obviously, we want to work on the jumping up. But we could do that without a box, right? We just stand here and jump up as high as we could. But what a box does is let us not have to suffer the damage from landing all the time, because that's a big stressor to the body. So we jump up on the box, step down. So that's the main reason that we're doing box jumps, is so we can get more jumps without the stress of landing. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is people think, well, a lot of people think that when they're jumping on a box, that's how high they're actually jumping. So this is a 12-inch box, which obviously isn't very high. But if we're going to be jumping onto this box, if you think about where my hips are right now and where they are when I get on the box, it's not necessarily going to be 12 inches. It depends on how I land, right? So if I sit here, my hips are here, and I jump on the box, land like this, clearly my hips have not gone up 12 inches, not even close. Maybe gone up 2 or 3 inches. So a big part of box jumping, the way people do it these days, involves how deep you can squat. So they'll jump up onto the box, and then depending on how far they can pull their knees up and still land on the box, that's going to be a big element of it. So it's not the sides of the box is how high you're jumping, it's just how high you're bringing your feet up as opposed to your hips. Okay, another way to think about it is, if I'm hanging from this pole, right now from here, my feet are flat, and then I could just bring my knees up. My hips haven't gone up at all, and yet probably about 2 feet off the ground. Get it? 2 feet off the ground. But anyway, you see the point, is that by bending your knees, you're bringing yourself up that way, and that also impacts how high you're actually going when you're jumping onto a box. So we can use that and then just stick with a smaller box. So a lot of people, they're afraid to try and jump onto a high box. Well, that's all right. If you're just going for the workout, increasing your jumping ability, you don't really need the high box. So instead of just jumping onto as high a box as you can and winding up with your knees sharply bent, your hips all bent, instead try jumping on the box so that your legs are straight up over the box. And now you know that you've actually jumped 12 inches, right? Because you brought your hips up, because the time you landed, your legs are relatively straight, and that's where your hips were at the time you landed. So that makes it a lot easier in terms of the size of the box that you need to have. But it doesn't make it any easier in terms of how high you have to jump. Right? You still need to jump the same distance. Okay, so we can jump now with a smaller box because a lot of people are afraid to jump onto a really high box, and not necessarily without reason. If you go onto YouTube and look at box jump fails, you can see some pretty nasty falls of people jumping onto a higher box. And again, there's no big advantage to jumping on a higher box other than it's a big challenge. And some people may jump higher just to try to make that challenge. But also again, it's not necessarily that you're jumping higher, it may just be that you're pulling your feet up higher to get onto the box. So you can go ahead and start with a lower box if you're comfortable with that, or if that's all you have, that's fine. Just work on getting to where you're up over the box with straight legs, and then when you can do that, then you can go up to a higher box. Because if it's a box that you can't actually reach with straight legs, then you'll just bend your legs as opposed to missing the jump and falling. So it makes it a much safer way of doing your box jumps. And I hope you can have some success with that. Try it out. Gary, Strong Fast Fitness, BC.